2, the first thing we need to do, because I'm replacing Councillor Richard Beddoe as chairman, is to ask one of my colleagues if they would like to nominate me as chairman of the meeting.
With pleasure. I nominate Councillor Andrew Smith to be chairman of this meeting.
One second. Thank you. Welcome to the meeting. First of all, I'd like to introduce the members. To my right, I've got Councillor Louise Hyams, and to my left, Councillor Paul Church and Ruth Gresham. I'm Andrew Smith, the chairman for this evening. The officers this evening are Geoffrey Woods is the presiding officer, and the presenting officers this evening we've got Amanda Coulson for the north, Julia Ashgar for the south, we've got Paul Simmons, the environmental officer, and Matthew Pendleton is the design officer, and this evening's committee officer is Jonathan Deacon.
Sorry, just to interrupt you there. Unfortunately, Matthew Pendleton was unwell today and has had to make not being able to attend. So my name's Tom Burke, I'm doing the as the design officer.
Thank you. Thank you, welcome. First of all, I'd like to explain that the committee, we get a packet of information every week which has detailed officers' report, also a copy of every single letter or email representation received. We do all read through this in detail, so the fact that your representation isn't mentioned doesn't mean that it hasn't been considered. I can assure you that we spend a lot of time ensuring that each representation is fully considered. Declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations of interest? Paul.
In my capacity as Westminster City Councillor for West End Ward, which contains the communities of Fitzrovia, Marylebone, Mayfair and Soho, I meet and engage regularly with residents and resident associations, amenity societies, businesses, developers and their representatives and others on a regular basis. I also consider councillors from both the majority and minority groups on Westminster City Council my friends, and as such meet with them regularly. I confirm that I have not discussed the items on tonight's agenda with anybody in advance of the meeting. I will take decisions on the basis of facts presented to me.
Ruth?
Thank you. Just to say that I and the head of Robbinsfield Infant School, item 2, are both on the Standing Advisory Committee on Religious Education. I have not discussed the matter with her.
Thank you. Officers, any interest? I'll sign if my colleagues are happy, I'll sign the minutes from the last meeting. Thank you. And the first item will be item number 1. Which is the Carlton Tavern in 33 Carlton. We'll hear from officers, and we've got representation from 2 ward councillors.
Chairman, just before we start, we have Peter Nixon from Legal Services here as well, and Roll Piper, who is the head of the planning enforcement team, is also here, as this application raises issues which cover both their fields of expertise, and you might like to ask them questions as well.
Good evening. Item 1, the Carlton Tavern Public House. This report tonight is seeking the committee's agreement to serve an enforcement notice in relation to the breach of planning control, namely the unauthorised demolition of this public house, which took place on Wednesday, the 8th of April, without the prior approval of the City Council. You've all read the report, so I'm not going to go into it in great depth, but I'll take you through some photographs. This is the public house before it was demolished. It's outside a conservation area, but Paddington Wreck is just behind, and this is looking west down Carlton Vale. This front elevation, you see it's attractive post-war building about 1920, 1921, with its decorative tiles above the frontage. And this is the view at the rear from the Paddington Wreck, and this is the single-storey lunch and tea room building. As you're probably all aware, there's been a lot of flurry of interest in national and local media and that the building was demolished without the consent of the City Council on the April. Before demolishing a public house, which is Class A4 use, the applicant is required to request the City Council under the prior approval process whether or not the building has been nominated as a community asset. And under this prior approval system, the Council has 56 days in which to determine that prior approval request, and note of demolition shall take place until decision has been agreed. And that 56 days also allows the opportunity for the community to be consulted and also put forward nominations if they want this building to be an asset of community value. This is a new piece of legislation that came into force on the 6th of April, 2 days before the building was demolished. Just quickly go through the planning history. I've got some more photographs to show you. As you can see, I think most people have seen the videos and the TV press on the demolition of the existing building. It was done at great haste, and as you can see, this is what the existing building looks like at the moment. The sidewall's still there. It's being now scaffolded. As you can see, the rubble of the interior that's been left on site, and that's just a view of the back of the premises. Planning permission was refused earlier this year for the redevelopment of the public house to put back a public house and 10 flats. So this is an elevation of the existing building and proposed. Now, permission was refused. It wasn't refused on the basis of the demolition of the existing building per se, but on grounds of the bulk, height and detailed design of the replacement building, which is thought to have detrimental impact on the adjacent Mayville conservation area and the views from the Paddington recreation grounds. Now, an appeal has now been lodged against that refusal of permission with the Planning Inspectorate, and the City Council has already requested for the Planning Inspectorate to ask that this appeal is heard by a public inquiry rather than a written recs procedure which the appellant has asked for. Since the refusal of that permission, a request was made by Councillor de Mordenberg to list the building of its architectural interest. And as you know from the report, English Heritage, who have now changed their name, now known as Historic England, undertook their initial assessment on the 19th of March. But they only had access to the parts of the building that couldn't get into the luncheon or tea room area. And they extended their consultation period at the request of the planning consultants acting on behalf of the owners until the 10th of April. But as we all know, the building was demolished before they could make a decision on the listing. Now, if I can circulate some late recs now, and I'll take you through them. 2, 4. As well. Pass those along. Jonathan? Yes, I know. I was just well, if someone can share, and then I will just take you through them. As you know from your report, prospects have been waiting for the views of Historic England. And as you can see your red bundle, I'll take you through them. The first response is from Historic England. There's a lengthy report that's probably best to have a look at page 3 of 8 of their letter. They generally advise that Carlton Tavern is of architectural interest. It's an early war public house. It meets the test for the listings of buildings. And subject to confirmation of the survival of the tea room and luncheon room, because they can only see externally, they would have advised, had the pub remained intact, it would have been a strong contender for listing, based on the survival of and the quality of the interior. However, given that the building has been demolished, it can no longer be a candidate for listing. As we all know, this is highly regrettable, given that it's been unlawfully demolished while undergoing this assessment for listing. Therefore, the Secretary of State of Culture, Media and Sport, who are the body responsible for listing, have decided not to list the building. And you can see on your second page response there is a response from them. We've also had further representations from Councillor Crockett and Councillor Prendergast. I'm not going to go much further with it because both of them are here tonight, but both all councillors considered that the council should look at extending the Mayville conservation area to include this site, which will offer more protection And Councillor Newfloyd has also written in and supports the officer's report for enforcement action. As you're probably aware, there are a couple of online competitions running at the moment. There's a Westminster one, which currently, the last time I looked at, 246 signatures, and a petition by camera, the campaign for Real Ale, with over 1,582 signatures the last time I looked this afternoon. And there's also an email from Planning for Pubs and a further email from Holly Hanson, who organised the petition as well. Just going through a couple of the points that have been raised in the late representations, just a few of them. One of the comments we've had from the Planning for Pubs has raised a number of health and safety issues. As you saw in the report, the buildings were demolished. Building control informed me this afternoon that though it was done in great haste, the health and safety executives aren't going to take any action because no one was hurt. However, the unauthorised demolition is in breach of building control regulation, and that they should have sought our approval before they demolished, and they can take action against that, and there's a fine of up to £2,500 not doing that. In terms of the appeal, the Planning for Pubs make comments made on the appeal. I don't think they're necessarily relevant tonight for you to take the decision in terms of serving an enforcement notice. But generally, you get the views from all the comments that we've seen that residents feel that it's been unwanted destruction of the building and its interior, and they feel angry that it's happened in this manner without them having the opportunity to comment. So the report that's before you tonight is seeking committee's approval to pursue the enforcement notice regarding the unauthorised demolition of the public house and to require that the building is rebuilt in facsimile. Quite happy to answer any questions that you may have, and Roll Piper is here to answer any enforcement issues, and Tom's here on the design matters. And of course we've got Peter with Nixon if there's any tricky legal questions you may have as well.
Thank you very much. It's been very informative in terms of where we are. We've got Councillor Jan Prendergast, who's one of the Maida Vale councillors, who I know has taken an interest in this and been championing it. So we shall hear from her, and followed by Councillor Tom Crockett, who's one of her colleagues, the Maida Vale councillor as well. Jan.